great. I'm going to go ahead and start recording. Cool. So, first thing we're going to do, every project that you make, you should be making a separate folder for front end and back end. I just want to make that clear. Even for your Git repositories, doesn't matter. Front end is always separate from back end. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder. I just learned this nice new command yesterday. Y'all might already know it. Take. Yeah, which is sweet. So we're going to say take g102 db. What are two things that I should do in this folder right off the bat? Nope, separate. Yeah. Git init. We want to dash y. What's that for?
Never mind. I was thinking npm init.
Which is the other thing that we need to do. npm init dash y. Yep, great. Looks good to me. Wait, what?
Shouldn't you do that in a different?
Oh, that was confusing. rmrfg102 db. Oops. db. Take g102 db. Git init npm init dash y. Great. That looks a little bit more normal for a starting project. Okay, then I'm going to touch app.js because that is our starting point. So there's 3 packages that I'm going to want to install into this just right off the bat because I know I'm going to end up needing them. Express. What was the other? I will need connects, so I'll make it 4 then. Cores. We do need PG eventually, and body parser. So these are like the general 5 packages, right? We need express, cores, and body parser for our server, and we need connects and PG for our database and connecting to it, writing our queries, etc., etc. Any questions about that?
Can you do this all at once?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's just sad.
npm init dash y.
Yep, npm init dash y, and that just says like yes to everything. Yeah.
What does take do?
Take creates a folder and then CDs into it. Yeah. Take is for a folder and then navigate in. Touch is for a file. You can also, to create a folder, you can do make dir, like mkdir, and then the folder name. That's like the standard one. I didn't know about take until yesterday, so. Yeah. Yep, for sure. Okay, cool. So we got cores, body parser, express, postgres, and connects all installed. So I'm going to go ahead and open this in my code editor. All right, great. What? Get out of here.
Excuse me, Patrick.
Yes.
Are you recording this one right now?
I am.
Yeah.
All right, so inside of my app.js, just to make sure, let's go ahead and fix our package JSON to do what we want it to off the bat. So, do I have an index.js?
No.
Let me blow this up. No, so my main should not be index.js. I'm going to change that to app. If you choose to call it index.js over app.js, this file right here, leave it index. I always call it app.js. Cool, so we changed my main to app.js. Now we need a start script as well, because I know we're going to run into that issue eventually. So what is my start script? Start node app.js, comma. Great. And again, your package JSON is a JSON file, so double quotes for the keys and double quotes for these commands. Yes.
Do you want your start above your test?
Doesn't matter.
You want development?
I just do if your main is set to app.js and you just run nodemon in the project, you don't need that. It'll automatically look for that main and then run it. Yes.
But you need nodemon installed globally, which you showed me directly, but I think the class
Yeah.
was taught something else. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, you do need it installed globally.
Oh, okay. Well, but I don't know where it was installed globally. I know he showed me the way where it wasn't in my dependencies or dev dependencies.
Mm-hmm.
And that was different from how we started it. Was all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is true.
Cool. I am going to now go back to my app.js. Package JSON looks good. First thing I want to do in my app.js. Yep. Then we need to invoke express, and we're going to call that app. Express invoked. We had two other packages that are going to be important for our app.js. What were those? Body parser. So we're going to say app.use cores, app.use body parser .json. And there's another thing that's good to have for body parser, which is like the URL encoded. App.use body parser URL encoded. What does that take? I forgot the parameters for that. Does anybody want to help me out with that? I can just Google it otherwise. So we do have bodyparser.json, but URL encoded is another thing that we want to use. What are the options? May contain the following keys: extended, inflate, limit, parameter, limit, type, verify. I think it's extended. Syntax allows for rich objects and arrays to be encoded in the URL encoded format, allowing for a JSON-like experience with URL encoded. So the reason we want that is just in case we're getting some other type of data from in our request, that'll allow body parser to parse it. Okay. So we want extended to be true. Doesn't like that. Space is required before. Oh, maybe that's just my linter. Okay, so then we want to do what to just make sure that our Express app is running? We have to tell it to, we need a listener. And where do we want it to listen? Port. We haven't created that variable yet though, so let's go ahead and do that. Const port equals process.env.port or 3003. So, and why is process env port first? Yes?
For the production environment.
Right. So when we deploy this to Heroku, Heroku will have a port environment variable set up running in that server. And so it is looking for that first, and if it finds it, it will use that. If it doesn't find it, it'll serve over 3003. And the reason this is important is because if you always run on 3003, there's a very good chance that Heroku is already using that port. Right? So you're trying to make it use a port that it doesn't want to. It dynamically assigns a port. We're going to app.listen on port. And then we're going to do a nice little fat arrow function in there just to console log something so that we know that it's working. Running on port. Great. Okay, so now how are we going to make sure that this works? NodeMon. Woo! All right, we got our Express server going. What's going on?
Not throw a bomb, but I had a question about NodeMon.
Uh-huh.
It starts like, I'll fire up NodeMon, and then it just keeps pooping out those yellow and green things without refreshing the page. Do you know why it does that?
So anytime you save a file in your server, it is going to refresh the server. So it'll kill it and start it again.
Yeah, I'm saying like when you're not saving new things, and it just keeps like firing.
It shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean that's been how I set it up, but it's just like.
Yeah, if you want to take a look after this, I can see and maybe we can figure something out. Otherwise, it should restart every time that you save a file in your server because it is watching for those changes. Okay, so we've got our Express app. It works. I'm gonna go ahead and make a Git repository because I want to make sure that at each step that something works, that I am adding, committing, and pushing. So that if I break something and I've tried a bunch of crazy stuff and I want to revert back to a certain stage, I can. So I'm going to make a new repository. We'll call this g102 db2. Create repository. Here's my URL. Git remote add. What do I want to call this? What is the name of my remote going to be? Conventionally. Origin. Yeah. Great. So I'm going to Control C out of that. There's one thing I'm missing here to keep my node modules from going up. Git ignore, touch.gitignore. And what I want in here, James slacked out before like the last git ignore you'll ever need. That is very helpful just to copy paste in here, but for now I'm just going to do node modules. And I also want to do ds store. I don't intend on navigating into this from Finder, but on a Mac, if you navigate into this folder, it will leave a ds store file as like a breadcrumb, and it's really annoying and it's useless. So I'm going to leave those in my git ignore. Now I'm going to git add, git commit, initial commit, Express server working, git push origin master. Did I see a hand?
Yeah, so I committed before I did the git ignore,
Mhm.
before I did that add. Would you just stash the commit and then redo it? Or?
There's definitely a way to do it that way. My go-to way, which is probably not the best, but is to delete node modules, go ahead and add commit push again, and then npm install again to get that folder, and then since you've deleted it from the repository and it's come back, it will stop tracking that file,
Okay.
or folder rather.
And did you push the forward?
No, I didn't. I just want to throw out. I haven't
Oh.
committed. I just added the file, so I just want to throw that out.
You can do a reset head, and head is all caps. You can do it with a caret or tilde at the end of it, and it will undo the last commit.
Okay.
Thanks. Great. So I also wanted to break Express routes out into a separate folder, just for when you have, if you have multiple tables, it's nice to be able to have your routes for each table broken out into different files so that you don't have an app.js that is 400 lines long. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder. I'm going to call this routes. The first route is going to be called students.js. So for this, we definitely need to require in router, but I'm going to check the docs real quick just to make sure that I implement it correctly. So express router. Route paths, that's not what I'm looking for. Let's see, router. Express router, there we go. Cool, so this is, let me blow that up a little bit. This is kind of the syntax that it is going to require. So, pretty simple. We're going to take that. We're going to put it in my students.js. And it needs to have an export as well. I think I can just export router, but let me double check that. Yep, module.exports router. Great. So let's assign a get route. We don't have any data yet, but we can send a response regardless, right? So let's do router.get base route, right? We don't want anything complicated. What are the parameters we need to pass in here? The two mandatory ones. Which order? Rec, res. That's not how you do a fat arrow function. Can y'all see this font size in the back?
You just bump it up one more.
Yeah. Is that better?
Yeah.
Cool. So we just want to send some sort of response just to know that it's working. So we'll say res.send. We'll do res.status 200.send. Yeah. You got it. Great. But now we need to make sure that our app.js can use this. So let's go to app.js. We also want to say we want to use that. So we need to do const students equals require routes students. Oops. And then we want app.use, and you can assign like a base route for that. So we're going to assign that base route to be students, and then students. So the idea behind this is that when we make a request to our students table, in the URL we're going to have to use students / that is going to be the base route for our students table. And then students here is just me requiring in those routes that we had exported from students here. Let's see if it works. Running on port 3003. Great. Localhost 3003. Yeah. Cannot get. I done mussed up somewhere. Let's see what. No errors. Interesting. So app.listen, app.use. Let's double check the docs here real quick. So we require, I think that might be the issue. /students. Oh, and also, I just went straight to 3003. Yeah, there we go. So now we have broken our students routes out into a separate file. Can anybody tell me why I want to do that? A little bit louder? Separation of concerns. This file is now only concerned with routes for students. That's it. My app.js has a lot less information in it. And then if there's a problem with one of the routes, I know to go to a particular file, and that's where the problem most likely will lie. I'm going to break this out into a different workspace. Okay. Great. So we now have our basic Express server. We have broken our routes out into a separate file. We know that it works. It does the thing. Woo! What's next? Actually, hold that thought. Added students routes file, right? It's important. It works. We should probably commit and push. Hooray. All right, so now what do we need to do? Create a database. Great. Create DB g102 stuffs. Yeah. Great, so we now have a database. If I wanted to check, how could I check to make sure that exists? That's it? Yep, it exists. Fantastic. Next. What's up? What do we do next? We've created a database. We've created a server. What do we do? Huh? We could make the seeds, but there's a step prior to that. Connects what? Yep. Connects init. And what this is going to do is create our configuration file. There it is. So we installed some stuff earlier. I'm going to clear this out because I don't care about staging. I don't care about this pool or this migrations thing. I do need to add one of those, and I do need to have a connection here. What is my local connection going to be? Why is it going to be Postgres? Anybody tell me?
It's using your computer.
Right, and Postgres is running on my computer right now. How can I check that Postgres is running? What's that? That's root services what? List. There it is. PostgreSQL is running, right? So that's why we're using Postgres here, because that is like the base of what is running on our computer. That is kind of the start of the address. And then localhost, and then the name of your database, which, what was mine again? I named it something stupid. I'm going to copy this and paste it so I don't make any errors. Great. But is our client correct? PG is our client. What about here in production? PG once again. What about our connection here? Database URL. I don't like semicolons. Great. Somebody tell me what's up with this production connection.
Not on your computer.
That's true. It is not on my computer. What else?
Isn't it hidden so where like people can't see your stuff?
Yeah. It again is one of those environment variables that Heroku is going to create for me, and it's going to create it dynamically. So instead of writing out, like hard coding the URL there, I'm going to let Heroku do its job and create that environment variable for me, and that way this can reference it. If I hard coded it and I changed something, like I made a different Heroku deployment, that URL might change, and then I'm going to have to go and change it again. Right? It's the same reason you want to use variables just in general. This one is just hidden in the server. And when we create our Heroku add-ons, y'all remember that step? Like the Heroku add-ons create PostgreSQL database dealing bobber. Well, it shows you a line where it actually says created database URL and lists that out, which we can see later. But that's the point when you can actually see that is a thing in Heroku. You can also check within the config vars once you've deployed it. It'll show you there as well. Great. So here's our config file. Does anybody have any questions on this?
I had a thing that happened to me once that confused me on the is Postgres running.
Uh-huh.
Because you can start Postgres without the root and
Uh-huh.
you won't know that it's there.
That's true.
So I found out it was there using the PS command line tool, which is the process command line tool. So if you do PS, it will show you all it'll show you processes running. If you do PSAX or PS space AX, it'll show you all processes running, including ones of other users and including ones that are not currently attached to a head terminal.
Ooh.
If
Space.
pipe operator.
Yep.
Grep. Space grep, sorry.
Now you good.
Space, and then whatever you want to look at for the process name. So in this case, it would be Postgres, or just I think it'll just have the QL.
Cool.
It'll show you whether or not you have system processes running that are identified as Postgres. Incidentally, though, the PSAX pipe grep thing is useful for literally anything your computer could be running. So it's super useful if you're like, is this happening? Check it down.
Yes.
You can also use that for errors. So like when you're deploying to Heroku and you don't want that whole massive thing that usually pops out, if you have a Heroku doing that,
Mhm.
you can just do the same gress thing with the pipe, and it'll show you only the errors that you're looking for.
And what does that syntax look like? You do PSAX
No shadow.
pipe grep. Oh, cool. There's a lot of like bash commands can be super useful. Super useful. Thanks, y'all. Great. All right. So now we have our config file. I don't want this in here either. Let's just make that nice and clean. So what's next? Phil, this is something that you said we could do. We could do seeds, but on the other side of that, what do we want to make first?
Migration.
Migrations. Connects, migrate, make, and what do we want to call this table? Students. Great. So now that generated this migrations folder right here, and it generated this file. So, Gesundheit. Within this file, I want to ask the question again. What's up with this name? It's a timestamp. So if I were to make another one, migrate, make, la. You now have two. Which one of these is going to run first? The earlier created one. Right? And I think I got a question about this last time. Numbers come before letters when it's looking like which one comes first in the alphabet. Right? So that timestamp will make sure that the first one I created runs before the second one I created. So that becomes really important when we're creating relations between tables. I just want to reiterate that. Any questions about that? Cool. I don't want this la. Great.
So would you have more than one migration ever?
Absolutely. You want like a migration file for each table that you're creating.
Okay.
And you can even you can create the relations after you create all your tables also. So you can have a migration that adds columns to a table as well. But here we go. What does exports up do? It creates a table and the schema, right? The table is the block inside of the database. The schema are the columns and the data types. What does exports down do? Drops the table. Great. Andrew, do you have a question before that? Okay, cool. All right, so what do I want to do in this exports up?
Make a return.
Make a return. What are we returning?
Return, connect schema, create table.
What do we want to call the table? What should this value be? And what does it represent?
Individual.
Like, yeah, a specific entity in the table. Like, what are the things that it needs to have? So we're going to call it student. Oh, how did I do that? Yeesh. All right. So what is the first thing we want to create in our student table? What? ID. Why?
Primary key.
It's a primary key. Everything in this table needs to have a primary key, right? That is a unique way to reference that specific entry. So we're going to do student.encrypt. And if you don't pass ID in here, it defaults to ID.
On
Just
the first one or
on increment. I pass it in every time, but
Is it increment or increments?
I don't remember.
Increments.
Is it increments? Will it autocomplete it for me? Nope. Cool. Where could I check to see if that was correct? The docs. Legit. I mean, if you're ever worried, you could try to run it. You could also just go check the docs. Like the Connects docs are really good in that they have everything, and it has like at least a decent explanation of all of the different things, whether it's a query builder or a schema builder. Don't be afraid to check those out. Cool. What was the next thing that we had in there? The spacing is tripping me out. I don't like it. Whatever. Name? Is that cool? Student. What data type is that going to be? String. If I can spell. Name. What else? Name's important. I like useless superpower a lot. And I'm just going to try to use some of the data that was that y'all posted already. So let's see if I can pull up what all there was there. You have it right there?
Latitude and longitude.
Okay, so student dot, was it pre underscore occupation? This is not how you do it. Cool, what else?
Hometown underscore lat.
And what data type was that?
Decimal.
Decimal. Hometown lat. And there are two optional arguments you can pass into this one. Peter, you might be able to answer this. Connects. Let's look at these docs real quick.
Are you sure I pronounce it next?
Good point. Good point. Decimal. So, what is precision versus scale? Scale gives us the decimal places, but I don't know what the precision is exactly.
I think the precision is so like it's using floats,
Mm-hmm.
and computers suck at precision with floats.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes more space to specify a larger volume of precision.
Okay.
I can't remember. I think scale it has to do with. I'll look this up. I think scale has to do with the like variability in that precision. So it'll scale it around by twos.
Uh-huh.
You specify that, but honestly, I've never used scale. Incidentally, like there is rarely a decent use for floats. Most of the time, you will see people use integers because of the lack of precision computers have for float calculations. And so, like, this is super common. A lot of people will be like, I'm going to use like something that represents money. And since money has decimal places, I'm going to make it a float. It's actually a really bad idea because you can accidentally round things in the wrong direction. So the most common way to do money, for example, is actually just do an integer and count cents rather than dollars.
Interesting.
It's the smallest unit.
That makes good sense.
But I'm going to look up that scale and have a better answer too. Because
Cool.
I'm
I'm going to go ahead and pass in these arguments. The default was 8, so we're going to leave it that. And then lats have 4 decimal places generally, I believe. So, and that was what affected that, was that scale. So I'll do student dot decimal again. Hometown long. Do the same thing, 8 and 4. The only reason I'm using 8 here is because that was the default. And since the arguments come in a particular order, I want to make sure that I'm passing things in. Great. What else was there? Yeah, what's up?
What if you don't want the precision in there? When we did it last time, we ran into an issue with it, like I had to have it.
Uh-huh.
Is there a way to just like only say take it to 4 decimal places, but it could be sloppy if you want it?
So it said something about using null. Specifying null as precision creates a decimal column that can store numbers of any precision and scale, and that is supported by Postgres. So,
put either of those and just put null.
yep, let's see what happens. Null.
I have an answer about that.
Sweet, what is it?
So precision tells you the total number of significant digits on either side of the decimal point.
Ah.
Scale restricts only the right side.
Uh-huh.
You specify how big you want the left side to be, potentially, and then how big you want the right side to be of that decimal.
Right. So if we had a precision of 4 and a scale of 2, that means there could only be 2 numbers on the right side and 2 numbers on the left side.
Right. So precision precision is the entirety of it. So if you had, so their example is if you had 23.5141, that's a precision of 6 and a scale of 4. Precision 6 because it has 6 integers, and then scale of 4 because there are 4 digits to the right side of the decimal.
Sweet.
Although truthfully, like I've never had it.
Cool. Good to know, though.
Look it up.
We're going to pass null in now and see if that does a thing, because it says that you can pass null and it'll let you do anything you want. All right. What was another column? Is that all of them?
The last one's useless super.
Okay, cool. Student dot string useless superpower. Great. Does that look all right? I'm going to make this an ES6 function as well. Since we're using ES6 everywhere else, might as well. Great. All right, so I think that does it for creating our table in our schema. Yeah, what's up?
So the order of the should be the same as your seed, right?
I don't think it matters.
Oh, okay.
But let's see what happens, because I didn't put these in any particular order.
Okay.
So let's see. Are any of these out of order right now? Favorite animals out of order? Cool. Let's leave it that way and double check just to see, because I don't think it matters, but who knows? All right, so for exports down, again, tell me, what is the purpose of this function?
Drop the table.
Drop the table. Cool, so we're going to return connects schema drop table if it exists students. That's it. The reason we use drop table if it exists is just a way to specify, like, if this table doesn't exist, don't throw me an error when it can't be dropped. So like if you ran connects migrate rollback twice and it said the first time it rolled back the migration you had made, but the second time that table doesn't exist anymore, it's going to throw an error. I don't want an error. I just want it to drop it if it exists. So that's the thing. So we're done with this file. That's our migration. Shall we see if it works? What is the command to run my migration? Connects migrate latest. Woo! I love that. Feels great. Feels great. All right, cool. So we have our table and our schema in place. Next, what should we do? Seeds. What is the command to do that? I'll just have connects create it for me. Close. Connect seed make. It's like kind of the same format as migrations, except it's connect seed run to run them, and to run your migrations it's connects migrate latest. I don't know. It's just the way it is. All right, cool. So what do we want to call our seed? Just students? Pants? We can call it pants. That doesn't make much sense, but like students pants. There is nothing about pants in our migration, so it's a little bit misleading. So I'm going to say we're going to call it O1 underscore students. Why? It is the first table that is going to be created, right? So again, you want to try to match your seeds up with your migrations, right? They run separately, right? You don't do migrate one table, migrate one seed, migrate next table, migrate next seed. Does all your migrations and then all your seeds. You want to make sure that they run in the same order, because again, if you have relations, it's going to be like, if you run things out of order, it's not going to find that relation and it's going to break. So that's why it's important to have that integer at the beginning. Specify that this is the first seed that we are going to run. Yeah. Any questions about that? Cool. So, where are my seeds at? There they are. I don't want these comments in here. I don't want this to be an ES5 function because we're using ES6 just about everywhere else. Cool, and then same thing here. Great. All right, what was my table name? Fantastic. Gesundheit. All right, I don't like semicolons either. Get out of here. Okay, let's get some data. Is that pinned? I don't think I pinned it. Thread. There we go. Nope, wrong thread. Dang it. Add your repos, a thread. Here's another thread. I think this is the one we're looking for. Yeah. Great. We're going to see some double quotes. I want some single quotes because that's what I use. Knock out column 1. Yikes. That is a formatting nightmare. Oh, yep, thank you for that. Do you have all of them? Yeah, that'd be great. I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of that. Something that is also really important when you're dealing with data is make sure to keep it consistent. And that's why I was yelling at y'all about, like, I specifically put up a format, like follow that format exactly, right? Like, we do not need degree symbols, we do not need cardinal directions, and everybody should be using the same style of quotes. Keep it consistent. Yeah. Thank you. Alright, so let's see if we got any double quotes in here. Yep. There's one. There'll be another here. I'm going to delete this single quote too because that throws a wrench and it makes sense why there were double quotes there. Let's see if there's any others. No other results. Everything is lined up. Oh, no, it's not. Get over. What? You want tab? Oh, that was weird. Whoops, well, I screwed up that. Dang it. I tried to save time with the Command D trick, and it just set me back. Do y'all know about Command D? It will select the next thing exactly like what you have. So, for instance, if I highlight that and then do Command D, oh, it's not highlighting anything else. I don't know why.
Just to be clear.
Yeah, for sure.
Days, are you emphasizing the single quote, double quote thing because it will matter, or more from a consistency, like best practices?
Only consistency. Single quote, double quote is yeah, for sure. It's a good question. Good question. Single quotes versus double quotes. It doesn't matter, but if you have, for instance, an apostrophe in your string, That's going to throw off your single quote, so you might have to double quote it. It's just important to be consistent throughout your code. I'm a proponent of single quotes because one keystroke. Some people like double quotes because it makes more sense and you don't have to worry about apostrophes. But it's two keystrokes, and I'm like, just give me the one. Yeah.
Is that specifically only this, or is that like across all languages?
Some things you're going to need to use double quotes, like JSON files have to use double quotes. I'm talking specifically about JavaScript.
Is there any that specifically needs single quotes, or can they all use double quotes?
I'm not sure. Peter, are there any programming languages that specifically require single quotes or specifically require double quotes?
Yep. Go is a good example. Go treats single quotes as delimiters that define a room, which is a special kind of type in that language which identifies basically a single UTF-8 character. And so it actually like represents basically a byte. So you can never do like single quotes and two characters, or it won't even compile.
That's how Java works too. So
Yeah.
it has to be double. So there's nothing that has to be single.
Nothing has to be single quotes. No language specifically requires it.
I can't think of one that requires single quotes. There are other languages where single quotes and double quotes change what you can do. So for example, Ruby, if you use double quotes, you're allowed to perform string interpolation inside it, the same way that JavaScript allows you to do string interpolation only inside of the backtick.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Ruby, if you have a single quote string, you cannot do string interpolation. So yeah, there are a bunch of languages that treat this stuff a little different.
Cool. Thanks. All right, so we've got our seed file now. How do we make it go? Anybody?
Next seed, run, push it. Oh, run.
That's it. Woo! Green! That's fantastic. I love it when it works. So, what do I need to do now? I've got a thing that works.
Yay.
What should I do? Huh? Commit. Commit, 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 commit. Great. So now that's taken care of. So what's next? Dane, I think you said that. Gary? Yeah. Database connection. Actually, I'm going to pull that back up. Touch database dash connection.js. Again, you can do what we're doing in this file inside of your queries. The reason that we do it outside of it in a separate file is what?
Separation of concerns.
Separation of concerns. That's right. This file is specifically just to connect to our database. That's all it does. Right? With your files, with your functions, with your CSS, like, focus on what exactly that particular thing is supposed to do, and it does just that. Great. So we got database connection.js. So the first thing we want to do is establish like what our environment will be. So we're going to say const environment equals, we either want to do process.env.node env or what? Development. Mm-hmm. Exactly. This will, if our code finds this variable, that will evaluate to production on Heroku in our use case. Great. So next, I need to do what? Where are these two environments located? In our connects file, exactly. So we're going to call this config equals require /connects file. Great. And then, how do we put those two together? What does that equal? How do we go to our connects file, which, if you remember, what is coming out of our connects file? What data type? Object. So, not JSON. That's not the format, but it is an object, right? This is our export. Okay, modular exports makes this specific thing, whatever is within it, available outside of that file. So when we say, where are you? Require connects file, that config is just an object. That's what that evaluates to. So how do we go into that configuration at one of those two environments? It's an object. What are two ways to navigate objects? Yeah, Dane.
Config and then in brackets environment, since they would be an index of either development or whatever it was.
Production. Right. Why are we using brackets?
Because it's an array.
There are two ways to navigate objects. Yeah.
Is because we're using like the variable name as the key as opposed to the value, remember?
We're using the variable name as the key.
Yeah.
That's right. Right? So if we used dot environment, it would look specifically for a key inside of our object called environment. It does not give a shit about this variable. We are using bracket notation to be able to pass that variable in and have a dynamic key there, pretty much. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Did you just say that again?
Yeah. The reason that we're using bracket notation here is because that way we can pass the environment variable in and have a dynamic key here. If you use dot notation, it is literal. It will literally go to the environment key, which, if we look at our connects file, does not exist. Questions? Great. Then we need to require in connects, because that is the library we are going to be using to write our queries, and that is how we are going to get into the database using that library. So const connects equals require connects. And then, does anybody remember what the last step of this is? You can do this, by the way, in like 1 line, 2 lines, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What's next? Yep. So we're going to say const connection, and what does that look like? Right, we're invoking connects just like we invoke express. Right, we require express, which is the library, and then we invoke it to make use of it. Right, we're requiring in the connects library, and then we are invoking it to make use of it and passing it the configuration, the environment that we want it to use. Questions? To me, this is the most confusing part of this whole process.
Can you say it one more time?
Yes. So why we are using connects here?
Yes.
So connects is the library that we are using to do all our migrations and seeds and queries. And so we need to require in that library. Because, so just like Express, we require the library in, and then we invoke it to use it. So we are invoking it here, and we are giving it the environment that it needs to actually connect to the database. So then, how do we get this connection variable out of this file? Module x.exports. Module.exports equals connection. Why are you angry? New line required. Yeah, that's just linter. Okay, whatever. Great. So now we should be able to write a query that goes in and does something with our database, right? We already ran our migration in seed, so we should have data in there. How can we check without writing any queries with connects that our data is indeed in our database? Check it? Yeah, how? What was my database name? I'm just going to go up. \L. \D. So that'll give us our list of relations, right? Which one are we looking for here? Students. Do students exist? Yes. There it is. But how do we list everything that's within students? Select star from students, semicolon. All right, that's hard to read, but if we've got stuff. There's stuff in it, right? And what was that query written in? What programming language was that? SQL, yeah. So that's an example of a SQL query. So when you're writing your connects queries, if you do want to try doing SQL, they look really similar. Syntax is just a little bit different, but a lot of the words are the same. Cool. Yeah. So we know that we have data, we know that we have a table, we know that we have a database. We think that this should work, right? But to actually test if it works, we need to make a query. So, I'm going to do this. I don't care about open editors. I'm going to do this similar to the way we did routes. I'm going to make a new folder called queries, because if we had multiple tables, we might have multiple query files. Cool. So I'm going to make a nice little new, wait, is that within seeds? Yeah. Make a new folder, call it queries. Make a new file on that. I'm going to call this students underscore queries.js. I'm actually going to change the name of my routes file as well. Routes. That should update the import into my app.js. Students routes, cool. So that should be good. So we got our routes. So here's our queries. What is the first thing that I need to pull into this? Database connection. So const. I know you can call this whatever you want, whatever makes sense to you. I'm going to call it DB equals require. Dang star, get out of here. / database connection. Yeah. Cool. So that's a thing. So now there's two ways you can do this, and I mentioned this last time. You can either write all of your functions out, and then make a modular export statement, or just write all of them inside of your modular export statement. I'm going to just write all of them inside of the modular exports. So instead of, I'm going to do it similar to the connects file, where everything's just within it, as opposed to like, where do we do that? Our database connection, where we establish everything and then exported it. Does anybody have any questions about that? Great. So first query, I guess let's do this. Module.exports equals an object. What should our first query do? Get all. I'm going to call it something different because last time I think we just called it get all, and that if we have, again, multiple tables, get all what, right? So get about read all students. Whoa, nope. There we go. Forgive my linter, it likes 2 spaces and I like tabs. So ignore all the red. So what do we want to do in this? and then the table name. What is our table name? Students. Do we need anything else? Nope, you don't. Again, there's another way you can write this so that it's a little bit more SQL-ish. You could do like return DB, what is it, from students. I forgot exactly what it is. The Connect docs have it. There's another way you can write it that is a little bit more loquacious, but it works, right? Again, I'm a fan of writing things short and they make sense to me. So we're just going to leave this return DB students. This is inside of our module exports, so we will have access to it outside of this file. So where am I going to use this query? We've structured this whole thing a little bit differently than last time. Routes. That is correct. So students, routes. So at our base route, I want to use that query. But how do I get that query into this file? Yeah.
Var queries require student queries.
Actually, I don't like vars.
But like,
I saw that right here. Yeah, you're right.
Does a variable require it?
Yep, exactly. Const queries. How about, yeah, I'm just going to call it queries. Student queries is what it is. It's probably a better naming thing, but I'm just going to type queries because I don't want to write student queries out every time. So we need to go up a folder into queries, and then student. Did I name it students or student? Students. Good, I kept it consistent. Students, queries. Great. Yeah, I do. Thank you. Great. So I'm gonna cut that out. So now, when our base get route is hit, what do we want to do?
Queries. Read all.
Then what?
Not then.
What is the first thing we're passing into our dot then? What does it represent? The response from our queries, right? What did that resolve? What did that return? It returned students. Okay? Let's send a status as well. So res dot, we'll set the status as 200 and dot send. We can do it like that. Why are you angry? Space is required. Whatever. Does it mean right here? Like that? Okay, that's pretty. I like that. Okay, so I did it like this. Why did I do that? Yeah.
To use that as the variable of the value.
It'll be
Or
both
the
the
key and the key and the value.
exactly. It'll be both the key and the value. Right. Cool. So I wonder if it's gonna work. Yep. Oh. Cannot find module dot slash routes slash students. Where did we do that?
Students routes.
Uh-huh. And where is that? Is that in my app.js? Nope. Oh, it is. See that nice little dot? I didn't save it. So let's restart. Crashed. Cannot find module database connection. That makes sense. Why? Does anybody see an issue here?
It's in a different folder.
Yeah, that's right. It is in a different folder. And what did I write? I wrote dot slash. Is that a different folder? That's the same folder. So let's fix that. So dot slash database connection. Because again, that'll take us out and then look for data connection in that layer. Okay, let's see. Did I save it? Saved it. Let's bring this back up. Woo! At least it's running. That's good. All right. Let's go here. Yeah. We got all our students. Yeah. Woo. Cool. All right. So this is a great time for me to add, commit, and push. Git add, git commit. What would be a good commit message? Added read all students query and route. Sometimes I like to say things like working. Sometimes you add stuff and it doesn't work, but you're like close and you still want to commit it. That way you know exactly what was going on when you made that commit. Do you all want to take a little break? Keep going. Keep going. Take a break. Cool. I'll keep going. All right. What's next? What about read by ID? So read student by ID. What does that need? An ID parameter. Why are we calling it ID? I mean, that's true, but also just because that's what we're going to pass it, right? It was a super dumb question, right? But read student by ID, we want to pass it the ID, right? Just be purposeful with your parameter names and with your function names. So we want to return what? Oh. Yeah. Return DB students. Dot where? Where what?
ID.
Do I need anything else?
Dot first.
What does the dot first do there?
Returns the first ID, right?
Ye. Okay, cool. Do I need anything else on my route or on my query? Does that look good to everybody? We're returning, we're connecting to the database, going to the table students, and returning the thing where ID is equal to the ID we're passing in. Looks good to me.
Do you have S read students by ID?
Sorry?
Using S read student by ID, which means students.
The goal is only to return one student.
Okay.
So we're gonna keep it get student. Also, if the ID wasn't your primary key and you had, say, students could have multiple IDs, or if it was read student by class ID. So like there might be multiple students with the same class ID, then that would be an instance where you could throw an S on there. But one student. Yeah, good question. I have too many things open. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. Definitely don't care about that. What is this? Don't care about that. Don't really need my app.js up. Don't really need my git ignore up. Cool. And that's the thing. It takes a little bit of time to keep your workspace clean, but I strongly suggest that you keep your workspace clean. Don't have 7 code editors up working on 4 different projects. Like, don't have 2 separate browser windows with 100 tabs each. Like, keep only what you need up on the screen. And my workspace is like this. Some people hate it, but I have Slack, full window terminal, code editor, browser, and then trash like Spotify or something like that over in my 4th window. That's what I like to do, but this is my layout, and I use it all the time. Find yours, find what works for you, and keep it consistent so that that is not a thing that you have to like worry about, right? Okay, so we have our query, we have our, let's make a new route. Router, router.get. Why are we using router again? As opposed to at? Take a stab at it, Greg?
Well, one, we don't have access to. Yeah, we don't have access to apples. We didn't define it in this file.
That's true.
For starters, and then we're in a router file. So that's what we're using is for router.
Yep.
I can't explain it enough.
That's pretty much it. So instead of invoking just Express, we're going into the Express library and using a package called like router. That allows us to break our routes out into separate files, export them, and use them in our app.js. Right? And we called that router. So instead of invoking Express here, we invoked the Gesundheit. We invoked the router part of that library. Any questions about that? Great. All right. So router.get. We're gonna do :id. Why? Anybody? Right, and what will this come across as? rec.params.id. You can call it whatever you want. Like, as far as you could do poop or fart or fast car or something. I don't care, but generally you should do something that makes sense. We're using an ID, we use ID. So, queries dot read student by ID. What are we passing in? We ain't passing in ID. Correct. I saw some of you had like kind of destructured ID out of that, which looks like const ID equals rec.params. I think that is an unnecessary step. You can do it if you want, and it makes sense, but it makes you have to like trace back. So if this is ID, then you're like, well, that's ID, but ID isn't being passed in. Where's it coming from? Oh, it's coming from there. It's just like, it takes a little bit more mental thought to read. You all know what rec params are. Your coworkers will know what rec params are. This is the way that I like to do it. Again, if that makes sense to you and that's something that you want to do, by all means, go for it. So cool. So that should return a student. And then what do we want to do? Dot then. Students. How many students should we be getting back? Student. Actually, I don't need to break that open. What do we want to do? Let's do a status again. Let's give it a 200. Dot send. What are we sending? So it's spaces for my linter. And then we had bracket 0. Why?
So we can only get that object there? Or that?
Let's see what happens. So I'm saved. Let's double check to make sure. Oh, not running. NodeMon. So let's do /1.
So you see how it's in an object, you want to get just that object.
You're close. That's why we used the first method here. Because it returned an array, and we just wanted the first thing in that array. Now, you'd be correct. You could do it that way on the server side if you did not do the first. So if we deleted this and then added a bracket 0, we're good. Although I don't think you would want to do, let me X this out. I don't think you would want to do this format, this ES6 thing, if you use bracket 0. Cool, so that works. Woo! 2 routes down. Guess what it's time for?
Can you just repeat that last part?
Yeah, give me 1 second, write a commit message. Added get student by ID, query, and route. Yeah. I'm sorry, what was, we were talking about,
Yeah, just repeat that whole last little part on.
Yeah. On using the first method.
Yeah.
So we want to like remove that outer array because it doesn't really serve a purpose. It is an extra like layer that it's pretty much unnecessary. An array of 1, it was always return an array of 1. We don't want that. So in our queries, we use this first method. Send back the first thing in that array, which is an object. A way that you can do that without using the first method is over here to put bracket 0.
Okay.
Because it'll send back the thing at the first index in that array. But if we're using this ES6 thing to create a key and value, you do not want to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody else have a question about that? Yeah.
If you index by the array, the query that goes to the database is also still fetching everything, I'm pretty sure.
True.
So what's happening is you're pulling every student. JavaScript pulls every student into memory. Postgres runs a query that pulls every student into memory. And then you just take the first one. So it's also less performant to do it that way. I was looking at the next, again, if you go to your queries, rather than returning them, and console log works inside of Express, right? To
Yes.
log. So if you make a new line after read student by ID,
Yep.
the line 7, sorry, if you just console log, and then copy your whole thing you're returning. So DB students all the way to first.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like, I still want to do it, sorry. And then just call .toString at the end of it.
This one?
Yeah, right there. And it looks like you can use that to actually get the raw sequence that it has to. So if you save that and hit that endpoint again, you should be able to see like what.
Oh, I did that.
Then go back to your thing. So right there is actually the SQL that's getting generated and sent to Postgres.
That's super cool.
So Connects is an adapter. It's just a SQL interpreter in JavaScript. So it just says like, I'm going to write JavaScript, but all it's doing is taking the JavaScript you wrote and building a string out of it. It's nothing fancier than that. And so when you want to actually query the database, like if you were to open PSQL and like copy that, open PSQL and connect to your database and run it with a semicolon at the end, you'll get the same data back, but like not as a JavaScript object or something that you run. So there's the same data that you're actually pushing to a JavaScript object. So if you're like, why isn't this working? You console log the SQL and like figure out the debug and like maybe I'm querying the wrong thing and this isn't what I want.
That's super cool. Nice. I had never used that toString method. That's super cool. Thanks, Peter.
Sometimes like building really large queries gets onerous.
Yeah.
And figuring out like what it is your query actually looks like is rough. Almost had to take apart an Express app that used Connects and then rebuild it in Ruby, and I use that all the time. So it's like, oh my god, what's
Sweet. All right. We're at 11:46. Let's do a post and then we'll cut. So down with that?
Sweet.
We're gonna keep on after lunch.
If you'd like.
Sweet.
How long do you think it would take to finish the whole thing?
With no talking, 10 minutes. With talking, it could take a while. It depends on questions, fuzzy areas for y'all.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to finish it.
Okay, cool. We can do that after lunch. And if you don't want to join in after lunch, that's totally fine. All right, so let's go to our queries. So next one we want to do is create student. What do we want to give it?
Student? New student?
I like new student. Yeah, new student. All right, so return. What are we doing? DB students.
Insert.
Dot insert. What are we inserting?
New student.
New student.
Return.
returning star. And why are we doing that? We don't necessarily want everything, but what do we want to come back from this query? What does this returning allow us to do?
Get our new object.
Yeah, to get our new student object that has just been inserted into the database. Right? So that way we can send it back to the front end. It can prevent you from having to run another fetch call right off the bat. It's cool just to see it. There's a few reasons why you would do that. Cool, so that's our new query. Let's go back over here. Router.post. What route? Yeah, base route. Here we're gonna do res queries dot, what was it called again? Create student. What are we passing in? Rec.body. Cool. Then what? What's next?
Send status. Oh.
Y'all are both close. Are we getting multiple students back? Getting one student back, right? What could we call that student? What would be a good name? New student. I don't need to open the curlies. All right, and then what were you saying, Greg?
Send status.
Yep, res.status. There's a good status for this. I don't remember what it is. HTTP cats. Is 201 created? That's what you did? Let's see. 201. Created. Yeah. If you haven't seen HTTP cats, it's really cute. Look at this one. Oh, he's a little furball. So 201 is the status we're going to want to send back. So 201, and then dot send. What are we sending? New student. Great. All right. Let's see if it works. Can I test this from the browser right now? No. What should I use? Okay, I don't want this. Let's make a new one. Our URL is going to be HTTP / localhost 2003 / student. I don't remember. So that'll be in our app.js. So students. Cool. Students. All right. How do we want to format our body? Body. Raw. Type JSON. I'm going to copy something from over here. Paste this in here. Is this going to work the way that it is? Why? Yep. Why? Because it's JSON. I hate these arrow keys on this computer. Woo! Alright. No comma. Alright. Fingers crossed. Send! Oh. Why not? What did I do wrong? Running on port 3003. Is my URL incorrect? I don't know. Let's see if what happens if I just copy this one over.
I copied straight out of the, what's it called?
There's no S. Yeah! Alright. It did the thing. So and we can double check on this just to make sure that it's actually in there. So we should have an ID. Oh, come here. Scroll there. Yep, there it is. Woo! So we got 3 out of 5 basic routes done. Or 3 out of 5 routes and queries done. But what do I need to do that works? Added create student query and route. Working. Woo! Organ master. All right, before we break, does anybody have any questions on what we have done so far?
Can you just remind me,
Yeah.
the rollback,
Mhm.
rollback
Mhm.
latest?
So those are both migration commands. So the connects migrate latest, connects migrate rollback. There's also connects migrate make.
Yeah.
And then there's, for your seeds, there's just connect seed make and connect seed run
And you need to roll back when you make a change
to your schema.
to your scheme.
Also, so like the way that we're handling IDs, where am I going? Migrations, there we go. The way that we're handling our IDs here is we're just telling it to increment.
Yeah.
So once the table is created, it will start at 1.
Yeah.
But as you reseed, it will delete all the seeds, but that increments is going to remember where it ended. So like right now, our last ID is 19. If I reran my seeds, I would expect the first ID to be 20. So let's test that. Oh, I'm not running it. So there's you can write like a raw SQL statement to make it start at the end of your seed, and it will start at the end of your seed always. But just for ease, you can do this. And if you don't like that when you run your seed, it starts at 20, you can either add that line of code to your migration or just roll back and then reseed.
Cool.
Yeah.
I made a change to my schema but didn't roll back.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't figure out why it was still giving me the same error.
Yep. That's the thing.
Yeah.
What's up?
I guess it didn't matter that the favorite animal was in the wrong spot because it just
Oh.
redid all of them.
That's a great question. Where's Trey? Or a great point. I forgot to revisit that.
Yeah.
It does not matter the order of your column names and the order of your seeds, as long as they all match somewhere.
It redid all of them into match your.
Huh.
Neato.
So that matches my migration. Fave animal uses superpower, fave animal uses superpower. Yep. Whereas in our seeds, where'd they go? Here they are. We did fave animal uses superpower. Cool. All right, let's break for lunch, and then probably around like 1:15, we can come back to this.